The moment my mother's number flashed across my phone screen, I knew my carefully constructed world was about to crack. 20 years of silence, and she chooses to call on the day of the Industry Excellence Awards. Perfect timing, as always. I'm Sylvia, and I've spent the last 2 decades building something from nothing. My office, perched on the 32nd floor of downtown Manhattan, is a daily reminder of how far I've come from that terrified 18-year-old girl, pregnant with twins and abandoned by the one person who should have stood by her side. "Ms. Lawson, your speech is ready for review," Claire said, poking her head through my office door. Her usual cheerful expression faltered when she saw my face. "Everything okay?" I declined the call and placed my phone face down. "Just ghosts, Claire. Nothing I can't handle." "The event starts in 3 hours. Jonathan's already there, supervising the setup." Claire hesitated. "And your twins called. They're surprising you by coming to the ceremony." A smile broke through my tension. Ethan and Cora, my unexpected blessings, now freshmen in college. They weren't supposed to make it tonight. Some excuse about midterms. "Those sneaky little—" My phone buzzed again. Same number. "Take it," Claire urged. "I'll hold your calls for the next 15 minutes. After she left, I stared at the phone until it stopped buzzing. 3 missed calls. Then a text. "We need to talk. I'm in the lobby." My hand started shaking. The lobby. She was here. I grabbed my blazer and headed for the elevator, my heels clicking against the marble floors with military precision. The security guard nodded as I passed, but I barely noticed. My mind was racing through the possibilities. Why now? What could she possibly want? The lobby was crowded with the usual afternoon rush, but I spotted her immediately. Roslyn, I refused to call her mom, looked exactly like I remembered, just with more expensive clothes and grayer hair. She was studying the building directory with that familiar, entitled expression. "What are you doing here?" My voice came out steadier than I felt. She turned, a practiced smile spreading across her face. "Sylvia, darling, look at you. So successful." She moved to embrace me, but I stepped back. 20 years, Roslyn. 20 years of nothing, and now you show up unannounced. Can't a mother be proud of her daughter? She glanced around the lobby. "Perhaps we could discuss this somewhere more private. Your office, maybe." "There's nothing to discuss. I have an important event tonight." "Yes, the Industry Excellence Awards. I read about it." Her smile turned calculating. "That's quite an achievement. Your company's grown impressively." A chill ran down my spine. She'd been keeping tabs on me. "What do you want?" "Can't this wait until we're somewhere private?" "No. Say what you came to say." She sighed dramatically. "Fine. I've had some financial setbacks recently, and I thought, given your success, you might want to help family." I actually laughed. "Family? You lost the right to call yourself that when you walked out on your pregnant teenage daughter." "I raised you for 18 years, she countered, her voice hardening. "I think that earns me some consideration. Besides, I have documentation of my investments in your early years. It would be a shame if questions arose about the origins of your startup capital." My blood ran cold. She was threatening me. Today of all days. "Security," I called out, maintaining eye contact with her. "Please escort this woman out." "You can't avoid this conversation forever, Sylvia," she said as 2 guards approached. "I'm staying at the Marriott. You have until tomorrow to reconsider." I watched them lead her away, my perfectly planned day now in shambles. My phone buzzed, a text from Cora. "Just landed, can't wait to surprise you tonight." The irony wasn't lost on me. One daughter eager to celebrate my success, while my own mother arrived to extort me for it. Back in my office, Claire was waiting with concern etched on her face. "That bad?" "Worse," I replied, sinking into my chair. "She wants money, and she's not above blackmail to get it." "Should we call Jonathan? Postpone the ceremony?" I thought about my twins, flying in to surprise me. About the years I'd spent building this company, the sleepless nights, the sacrifices. About the little girl, who once desperately wanted her mother's approval. No, I said, straightening my spine. She doesn't get to ruin this too. But Claire, first thing tomorrow, call our lawyers. If Roslyn wants a fight, she's going to learn exactly how strong her daughter has become. The Industry Excellence Award ceremony should have been my moment of triumph. Instead, I kept scanning the crowd, half expecting Roslyn to materialize and create a scene. The twins noticed my distraction immediately. "Mom, you're doing that thing with your necklace again," Cora whispered, reaching over to still my fidgeting hands. We were seated at the main table, waiting for the keynote speaker to finish. "Sorry, sweetie, just nervous about the speech." The lie felt bitter on my tongue. I'd promised myself never to lie to my children. Ethan leaned in from my other side. "Bull, something's wrong. You've given dozens of speeches." His dark eyes, so like mine, narrowed. "What aren't you telling us?" Before I could respond, Jonathan appeared behind us. "Sylvia, we need to deal with the situation in the lobby." My stomach dropped. "She's here, isn't she?" "Who's here?" Ethan demanded. "Your grandmother," Jonathan replied, his usual diplomatic tone hardening. "And she's making quite a scene." Cora grabbed my arm. "Grandmother, as in—" "Stay here," I ordered, standing up. "Both of you." Of course, they didn't listen. They never did when it really mattered. They followed me and Jonathan to the hotel lobby, where Roslyn was arguing with the event security. "I have every right to see my daughter receive her award," she was saying, voice pitched to Carrie. Several guests were already watching the drama unfold. "Mum, let us handle this," Cora whispered, but I shook my head. "Roslyn," I called out, keeping my voice steady. "This is inappropriate." She turned, that familiar manipulative smile spreading across her face. "Darling, I couldn't miss your big night." Her eyes landed on the twins. "And these must be my grandchildren. How grown up you both look." Ethan stepped forward, positioning himself slightly in front of me. "We're not your anything. You lost that right 20 years ago. Such hostility." Roslyn pressed a hand to her chest, playing to her growing audience. "I've made mistakes, yes, but I'm here to make amends, to be part of this family again." "Family?" Cora's laugh was cold. "You abandoned our mother when she was pregnant, with twins, at 18. There were circumstances you don't understand." "Oh, we understand perfectly," Ethan cut in. "Mum told us everything. How you kicked her out because her pregnancy would embarrass you in front of your new husband's fancy friends. How you changed your number, moved away, pretended she didn't exist." Roslyn's facade cracked slightly. "That's not entirely." "And now," Cora continued, "now that she's successful, you show up wanting what? Money, recognition, a relationship." "I raised her—" "No," I interrupted, finding my voice. "You didn't raise me. You controlled me, manipulated me, and when I needed you most, you abandoned me. The only thing you taught me was how not to be a mother." The lobby had gone silent. Roslyn glanced around, realizing her audience wasn't sympathetic. "I have rights," she hissed, dropping the act. "I invested in your future, paid for your education, until I got pregnant," I reminded her. "Then you wrote me off as a lost cause. Everything I've achieved, I did despite you, not because of you." "We'll see about that." She reached into her purse, pulling out an envelope. "I have proof of my financial contributions. Perhaps your investors would be interested." Ethan snatched the envelope from her hands. "You mean these?" He started tearing it into pieces. "Guess you'll need better leverage." "Security," Jonathan called out. "Please remove this woman. And this time, ensure she doesn't return." As the guards approached, Roslyn's mask completely slipped. "You ungrateful little bitch! You think you're better than me? I made you who you are." "No," Cora said firmly, taking my hand. "She made herself who she is. And she made us who we are. You're nothing to us." I watched as they escorted Roslyn out, her threats echoing through the lobby. The twins stayed close, their presence anchoring me. "Well," Jonathan said, breaking the tension, "I believe they're about to announce the Industry Excellence Award for Innovation in Technology. Shall we?" I looked at my children, my real family. and felt a surge of pride. Actually, I need to rewrite my acceptance speech. I think I finally know exactly what I want to say. About time, Ethan grinned, draping an arm over my shoulders. Just please don't make us cry in public. No promises, I replied, heading back to the ceremony with my head held high. Rosalind might have returned to haunt me, but she just reminded me of exactly how far I'd come and who had really been by my side along the way. The morning after the award ceremony, I found myself sorting through an old storage box I hadn't opened in years. The twins sat cross-legged on my office floor, examining faded photographs and documents. "Mum, is this you?" Cora held up a creased Polaroid of a teenage girl in an oversized sweater, trying to hide a small baby bump. 18 and terrified, I confirmed, taking the photo. That was taken the day before she kicked me out. Ethan picked up a wrinkled envelope. "What's this?" "Don't," I started, but he'd already pulled out the contents, a handful of bounced checks and a handwritten note. "Don't contact me again. You made your choice." Ethan's voice shook with anger. "She wrote this to you when you were pregnant with us." A knock at the door saved me from answering. Claire entered, looking apologetic. "Sorry to interrupt, but Rosalind is in the building again. She somehow got past security using a visitor pass from another company." "Of course she did," I muttered. "Where is she now?" "Conference room B. Jonathan's stalling her." I stood up, straightening my blazer. "Kids, stay here." "Not happening," they said in unison. The walk to the conference room felt like marching into battle. Through the glass walls, I could see Rosalind sitting there, examining her manicure while Jonathan kept a careful distance. "I'll handle this," I said, pushing open the door. Rosalind's eyes flickered to the twins. "Family meeting? How appropriate." "What do you want?" I remained standing, the twins flanking me. "To remind you of something you seem to have forgotten." She pulled out her phone, tapped a few times, and slid it across the table. "Remember this place?" The photo showed a small medical clinic. My heart stopped. "What about it?" My voice sounded distant. "That's where I took you for your first prenatal appointment, where I paid the deposit for your medical care." Her smile turned predatory. "Before you decided to ruin everything by keeping them." "You wanted me to—" I couldn't finish the sentence. "I gave you options," Rosalind said. "Very expensive options. Options that would have preserved your future. Instead, you chose this." She gestured vaguely at the twins. Ethan stepped forward, but Cora grabbed his arm. "Let her finish digging her grave," she whispered. "I have receipts," Rosalind continued. "Proof of every penny I invested in you. By my calculations, with interest, you owe me close to $500,000. I started laughing. I couldn't help it. "That's what this is about? Money? It's about what's fair. I sacrificed everything for you." "No," I cut her off. "You sacrificed me for everything else. Your reputation, your new marriage, your social standing." I pulled out my phone, and while we're discussing receipts, I played the recording from last night's confrontation in the hotel lobby. Her threats, her admission of attempted blackmail. "Extortion is still illegal, last time I checked," Jonathan added mildly. Rosalind's face paled. "You recorded me." "I record all potential security threats to my company," I replied. "Standard procedure. You wouldn't dare use that against your own mother." "Watch me," I leaned forward. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to leave. You're going to stay gone. If you ever try to contact me or my children again, this recording goes to every media outlet in the city. You can't—" "I can. I will. And just so we're clear?" I pulled out my checkbook, wrote quickly, and tossed it at her. "Here's $500,000. Consider every imagined debt paid. We're done." She stared at the check, then at me. "This doesn't change anything. I'm still your mother." "No," Cora said quietly. "You're just the woman who gave birth to her. There's a difference." "Security's waiting outside," Jonathan added, opening the door. Rosalind stood, clutching the check. "You'll regret this, Sylvia. The truth about your success, about where you really came from, is right here," I interrupted, putting my arms around my twins. Everything I am, everything I've built, came from choosing them, from proving you wrong. So thank you, Roslyn. Thank you for showing me exactly the kind of mother I never wanted to be. After she was gone, Ethan turned to me. Did you really just give her $500,000? I smiled. Look at the check. Cora ran to the door and came back with the discarded check. She read it and burst out laughing. What? Ethan grabbed it. Pay to the order of your conscience, amount, 0 and euros. Mom, you're savage. I learned from the best, I said, hugging them both. Now, who's hungry? I think we all deserve some comfort food after that performance. Pizza? They asked hopefully. Pizza, I agreed, feeling lighter than I had in years. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't about money or power. Sometimes, it's simply about showing them exactly what they threw away. We have a problem, Jonathan announced, bursting into my office 3 days later. He dropped a stack of papers on my desk. Your mother's been busy. I flipped through the documents, my stomach tightening. She's meeting with Marcus Reynolds, our biggest competitor. Not just meeting. Look at the last page. The final document showed a series of email exchanges. My hand started shaking as I read them. She's claiming she provided the initial seed money for my company. I stood up so quickly my chair rolled into the wall. That's impossible. I have every bank record, every transaction. She's fabricated quite a convincing paper trail, Jonathan said grimly. Reynolds is considering using this information for a hostile takeover attempt. Claire appeared in the doorway. Sylvia, the twins are here, and you need to see this. Ethan and Cora rushed in, Ethan clutching his laptop. Mum, she's gone public. He turned the screen toward me, showing a business news website. The headline made my blood boil. Tech CEO's success story questions. Mother claims rights to company ownership. That's not even the worst part, Cora added, scrolling down. She's giving interviews about how she sacrificed everything to support your early career. She's trying to force my hand, I said, pacing. Make me pay her off to keep quiet. Actually, came a familiar voice from the door, I'm trying to take back what's mine. Roslyn stood there, looking perfectly polished in an expensive suit. Behind her, Marcus Reynolds smiled like a shark that had just spotted blood in the water. This is private property, Jonathan stepped forward. You're trespassing. Not for long, Reynolds replied smoothly. Once these ownership documents are verified. They're forgeries, I snapped. Are they? Roslyn pulled out a yellowed envelope. Remember this, darling. The college fund I set up for you. The one you emptied to start your precious company. My heart stopped. The college fund. The one thing I'd tried to forget. That money was mine, I said carefully. You signed it over to me on my 18th birthday. Under duress, she countered, when you threatened to expose certain family secrets to your stepfather. The twins looked at me questioningly. I'd never told them this part of the story. You want to talk about secrets, Roslyn? I moved closer. Like why you really set up that fund, where that money really came from. Her smile faltered slightly. Mom? Cora touched my arm. What's going on? Your grandmother didn't set up that college fund out of maternal love, I said, never breaking eye contact with Roslyn. She set it up to hide money from her first divorce, money she embezzled from her ex-husband's company. Reynolds' shark smile disappeared. Is this true? Of course not, Roslyn laughed, but it sounded hollow. She's desperate. I have proof, I cut in. Every transaction, every transfer. I found the papers when I was cleaning out her house after she kicked me out. That's why she signed the money over to me so easily, because she knew I could prove where it came from. You're bluffing, she whispered. I walked to my desk, pulled out a thick file from the bottom drawer. I kept everything. Been waiting 20 years for you to try something like this. Reynolds backed away from Roslyn. I think we're done here. Marcus, wait. She reached for him, but he was already heading for the door. You didn't think I'd be prepared? I asked quietly. You taught me well, remember? Always keep leverage. Always have a backup plan. This isn't over, she hissed. Actually, Jonathan interjected. It is. Our lawyers are filing a defamation suit as we speak. Those false claims you made to the press, they're going to cost you. You can't prove they're false. Yes, we can, Ethan spoke up. We found your old accountant. He's very chatty these days, especially since his retirement. Rosalind's composed facade cracked completely. You ungrateful little... Security's on their way up, Claire announced from the door. Should I have them escort Mrs. Lawson out, or would she prefer to leave with her dignity intact? For a moment, Rosalind just stood there, looking older and smaller than I'd ever seen her. Then she straightened her spine, adjusted her designer bag, and turned to leave. You'll regret this, she said over her shoulder. No, I replied. I won't. But I think you might. After she left, the twins hugged me tight. That was badass, Mom, Cora whispered. Yeah, Ethan agreed. But why didn't you use this leverage before? I looked at the file in my hands, 20 years of insurance against this exact moment. Because sometimes the best revenge is waiting for your enemy to destroy themselves. Jonathan cleared his throat. Speaking of destruction, shall we discuss our counterattack? I smiled, feeling more energized than I had in days. Oh yes, let's show her exactly what happens when you try to take on this family. Got it! Cora burst into my home office, laptop in hand, Ethan right behind her. You won't believe what we found. I looked up from the legal documents I'd been reviewing. It was Saturday morning, but we'd all been working around the clock since Rosalind's latest attack. Remember how you said Rosalind remarried right after kicking you out? Ethan pulled up a chair. Well, we did some digging into her new family. And? I set aside the papers, intrigued by their excitement. She's done this before. Cora turned her laptop toward me. 3 times. The screen showed a series of news articles spanning the last 20 years. Each one featured Rosalind, under slightly different names, involved in various financial disputes. Look at the pattern, Ethan pointed. She marries wealthy men, usually with grown children. Then she somehow gains control of family assets, and suddenly there's a massive family fallout. Her current husband, Cora added, is Richard Sterling. My eyes widened. The real estate developer? The very one, Ethan grinned, and guess who's been quietly selling off his assets without his knowledge? A knock at the door interrupted us. Jonathan entered, looking unusually animated. You need to see this, he said, turning on the TV in my office. The news channel showed Richard Sterling himself, standing outside his office building, surrounded by reporters. Allegations of unauthorized property sales and misappropriated funds, he was saying. I filed for divorce and am cooperating fully with the investigation. Holy shit, I whispered. That's not all, Jonathan said. Richard's children reached out to our lawyers. They want to talk. Within hours, my living room had turned into an impromptu war room. Richard's 3 adult children sat across from us, sharing stories that felt eerily familiar. She isolated our father, Sarah the oldest explained, convinced him we were after his money. Sound familiar? Then she started managing his finances. Michael, the middle child, added. Said she was protecting the family legacy. But you caught her, I said. Thanks to you, Lisa, the youngest, smiled. When we saw the news about her claims against your company, we started investigating, found the pattern you exposed. We're building a class action lawsuit, Sarah said. Other families have come forward. Would you be willing to testify? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. A text from Rosalind. We need to talk. One last chance to make this right. She's desperate, Ethan observed, reading over my shoulder. Good, Cora said firmly. Let's finish this. I typed back, Marriott, 1 hour, come alone. The hotel lobby was quiet when I arrived. I'd insisted on going alone, though I knew Jonathan had people watching the building. Rosalind sat in a corner, looking less polished than usual. I assume you've seen the news, I said, sitting across from her. You turned Richard against me. Her voice was bitter. Ruined everything I built. Like you tried to ruin me. I leaned forward. I have to know, was any of it ever real? Did you ever actually care about anyone besides yourself? Of course I cared, she snapped. I gave you everything. You gave me nothing but lessons in manipulation, I cut her off. And now those lessons are coming back to haunt you. What do you want? She asked tiredly. I want you to disappear, sign a confession admitting your claims about my company were false, return everything you stole from Richard, and never contact me or my children again. Or what? I pulled out my phone, showed her the evidence we'd gathered. Or I make sure every law enforcement agency in the country knows about your pattern of fraud. Every news outlet gets your story. Every family you've destroyed gets their justice. She stared at the phone, then at me. You really hate me that much? That's the thing, Roslyn. I don't hate you at all. I pity you. You could have had a real family, real relationships. Instead, you chose schemes and manipulation. And now you're alone. I can change, she whispered. No, I stood up. You can't. But you can face the consequences of your choices. The papers will be delivered tomorrow. Sign them or face the consequences. As I walked away, she called out, I did love you, you know, in my way. I turned back one last time. Your way wasn't love, Roslyn. It was control. And now you've lost both. Outside, the twins were waiting in the car, despite my instructions to stay home. Well? They asked in unison. Now we wait, I said, sliding into the back seat. But something tells me she'll sign. And then, Cora asked, I looked at my children, my real family, and smiled. Then we go back to living our best lives, because that's the greatest revenge of all. She's not going to sign, Claire announced, bursting into the conference room where we were reviewing quarterly reports. And it's worse than we thought. Jonathan pulled up a news website on the projector. My stomach dropped as I read the headline. Tech CEO's dark past, mother reveals family secrets. She's gone nuclear, Ethan said, reading over my shoulder. Look at these allegations. The article detailed supposed evidence of tax fraud, claiming I'd used illegal means to start my company. Worse, it included personal attacks about my pregnancy, suggesting I'd manipulated and blackmailed my way through those early years. She's trying to destroy everything, I whispered. Mom? Cora touched my arm. There's something else you should see. She pulled up a social media post. Roslyn had shared old photos of me as a teenager, including some from when I was pregnant. The caption read, A Mother's Sacrifice, the truth about my daughter's rise to power. The comments were brutal. People were already calling for investigations into my company. Your stock is dropping, Jonathan said quietly. Investors are getting nervous. My phone rang. Richard Sterling's daughter, Sarah. I put it on speaker. Turn on Channel 7, she said without preamble. Now. Claire grabbed the remote. There was Roslyn, sitting in a studio, tears streaming down her face. As a mother, I only wanted to protect her, she was saying, but the things she did, the ways she manipulated people, I can't stay silent anymore. That manipulative Ethan started, but I held up my hand. Wait, look behind her. In the background of the shot, barely visible, was Marcus Reynolds. He was watching the interview with a satisfied smile. They're working together, Jonathan realized. Reynolds is backing her play. Of course, I said, everything clicking into place. He wants my company. She wants revenge. Perfect partnership. What do we do? Cora asked. I stood up, straightening my jacket. We fight back. Claire, call the station. Book me for tomorrow morning's show. Jonathan, get me everything you can on Reynolds' recent business dealings. Kids, I need you to... Already on it, Ethan interrupted, typing furiously on his laptop. Found something interesting about Reynolds' recent acquisitions. They all follow a pattern similar to Roslyn's schemes. And look at this, Cora added, pulling up another document. The timing of their meetings coincides with several suspicious property transfers. My phone buzzed again, a text from Roslyn. Ready to negotiate yet? Mom? Cora looked worried. What's our play here? I smiled, feeling strangely calm. We give them exactly what they want, a public showdown. The next morning, I walked into the same studio where Roslyn had given her tearful performance. She was already there, along with Reynolds, both looking smugly confident. "Darling," Roslyn said sweetly as the makeup artist prepared us for air. "Last chance to make this right." "Funny," I replied. I was about to say the same thing. The red light came on. The host introduced us, recapping the controversy. Roslyn launched into her well-rehearsed story about my supposed misdeeds. "And what do you say to these allegations?" the host asked me. I pulled out my phone. "I say, let's listen to something interesting." I played an audio recording. Reynolds' voice. "Once we take her company, you'll get your cut. Just stick to the story." Roslyn. "What about the illegal property transfers? If those come out..." Reynolds. "They won't. Trust me. This plan is foolproof." The studio went silent. Reynolds' face turned purple. Roslyn's makeup couldn't hide her sudden pallor. "That recording," the host stammered, "is that real?" "As real as the documentation I've just sent to the SEC about Mr. Reynolds' recent business practices," I said calmly. "And as real as the evidence of my mother's involvement in multiple fraud schemes across 3 states." "You recorded us?" Reynolds sputtered. "No," I smiled. "You recorded yourselves. My tech company specializes in cybersecurity, remember? Your phones have been compromising your conversations for weeks." Roslyn stood up, shaking. "You can't..." "Security is waiting outside," I cut her off, "along with some very interested FBI agents. Would you prefer to walk out, or should they come in?" The host was frantically signaling to the producer, but I wasn't finished. "Oh, and Mom, those photos you posted? Thank you. They showed everyone exactly what I overcame to build my success. Every comment attacking me just proved how strong I had to be." As security led them away, the host turned to me. "Would you like to make a statement?" I looked directly into the camera. "Success isn't about who gives you opportunities. It's about what you do with the challenges life throws at you. And family, real family stands by you. They don't try to tear you down for profit." The red light went off. Claire rushed in with updates about the stock price already rebounding. But all I could think about were my twins, watching from home, seeing their mother finally close this chapter of her life. The courthouse steps were crowded with reporters when I arrived for the hearing. 3 weeks had passed since the TV studio showdown, and now it was time to face the music, all of us. "Ms. Lawson," they called out, "any comment on your mother's plea deal?" I kept walking, Jonathan and the twins flanking me. Inside, the courtroom was already packed. Richard Sterling and his children sat in the front row, nodding as we passed. Roslyn and Reynolds were already there, both looking considerably less polished in their prison jumpsuits. "All rise," the bailiff called out. The judge entered, and the proceedings began. I listened as the prosecutor laid out the charges: fraud, extortion, conspiracy, securities violations. The evidence we'd gathered had opened a Pandora's box of crimes spanning decades. "The defendants have agreed to plead guilty to all charges," the prosecutor announced, "in exchange for their cooperation in ongoing investigations." Roslyn turned around, her eyes finding mine. For the first time, I saw something real in them: fear. "Before I accept these pleas," the judge said, "I understand the primary victim would like to make a statement." I stood, smoothing my skirt. Cora squeezed my hand as I walked to the podium. "Your Honor," I began, 20 years ago, I was 18 and pregnant with twins when my mother threw me out. She told me I was worthless, that I'd never amount to anything. Those words haunted me for years." Roslyn shifted uncomfortably in her seat. "But today, I'm not here to talk about the past. I'm here to talk about justice, not just for me, but for every family these defendants have torn apart with their schemes." I turned to face them directly. "Mr. Reynolds, you thought you could use my mother's bitterness to steal my company. Instead, you exposed your own criminal enterprise. And Mom, Roslyn, you thought you could destroy what I built, but you forgot something important." "And what's that?" Roslyn asked, her voice barely audible. You taught me to keep receipts, I smiled. Every manipulation, every scheme, I learned from watching you. The difference is, I use those lessons to protect myself and others, not to destroy them. The judge leaned forward. What are you asking for in terms of sentencing? The maximum allowed, I said firmly. Not for revenge, but for protection. These defendants have shown they won't stop unless forced to. They've hurt too many families, destroyed too many lives. Reynolds' attorney jumped up. Your Honor, my client. Save it, the judge cut him off. I've reviewed the evidence. The plea deals stand, with maximum sentences. He turned to Roslyn and Reynolds. You'll both have plenty of time to reflect on your choices. As the bailiffs led them away, Roslyn called out, Sylvia, please. Goodbye, Mum, I said quietly. I hope you find peace. Outside, the reporters were waiting again. This time I stopped. Ms. Lawson, how do you feel about the sentencing? I felt Ethan and Cora step up beside me. Today isn't about feelings, I replied. It's about accountability, about showing that success built on destroying others will eventually crumble. And what about your mother? Will you ever forgive her? I paused, considering. Forgiveness isn't about excusing actions. It's about freeing yourself from the weight of anger. So yes, I forgive her. For my sake, not hers. Mum, Cora whispered, look. Richard Sterling and his children were approaching. Sarah stepped forward first. Thank you, she said simply, for helping us expose the truth. We should be thanking you, I replied. Your courage in coming forward made this possible. Richard cleared his throat. We're organizing a support group for families affected by similar situations. Would you consider speaking at our first meeting? I looked at my twins, saw them nodding encouragingly. I'd be honored. Later that evening, we sat in my living room, surrounded by empty pizza boxes and case files we no longer needed. So, Jonathan said, raising his glass, what's next for the unstoppable Lawson family? Sleep, Ethan groaned, making us laugh. Actually, I said, pulling out my laptop, I've been thinking. We've learned a lot about how vulnerable families can be to manipulation and fraud. Maybe it's time to use that knowledge. What do you mean? Cora asked. I'm thinking of starting a foundation, something to help protect families, provide resources, legal support, turn all this pain into something positive. The Phoenix Foundation, Cora suggested, because you rose from the ashes of what she did to you. We rose, I corrected, hugging them both, and we're going to help others rise too. As my family discussed plans for the foundation, I realized something profound. Roslyn had tried to write my story as a tragedy. Instead, she'd helped create a legacy of strength, resilience, and hope. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even, it's about getting better. The Phoenix Foundation's inaugural event filled the hotel ballroom with survivors and their families. As I watched Sarah Sterling wrap up her powerful speech about recovering from familial fraud, my phone buzzed with a familiar prison number. I declined the call, just as I had every week since the sentencing. Still calling? Cora asked, adjusting the foundation's banner behind the podium. Every Wednesday at 6, I replied, like clockwork. Ladies and gentlemen, Jonathan announced from the stage, please welcome our founder, Sylvia. The applause felt different this time, not the polite corporate acknowledgement I was used to, but something warmer, more personal. These people understood my journey because they'd lived their own versions of it. When my mother first reappeared in my life, I began, I thought she came to destroy everything I'd built. Instead, she showed me exactly what needed to be built next. The audience leaned forward, many nodding in recognition. We all have stories of betrayal, of family members who chose greed over love. But those stories don't define us. What defines us is what we choose to do with our pain. A movement at the back of the room caught my eye. Richard Sterling had arrived with his youngest daughter, Lisa. They were supporting an elderly woman I recognized from the case files, another of Reynolds' victims. The Phoenix Foundation isn't just about preventing fraud, I continued. It's about redefining family. Sometimes family is who we choose, who stands by us when biological bonds fail. Ethan appeared at the side of the stage, giving me a thumbs up. He'd just finished setting up our new online support network, connecting survivors across the country. Today we're announcing our legal defense fund. No one should face these battles alone. No one should have to choose between justice and bankruptcy. The doors opened again. Marcus Reynolds' ex-wife entered with their children, all of them wearing Phoenix Foundation supporter pins. But most importantly, I said, my voice growing stronger, we're here to remind everyone that your worth isn't determined by those who failed you. It's determined by how you rise, how you rebuild, and how you help others do the same. After the speech, during the reception, Claire rushed over with her tablet. You need to see this. It was a news article. Rosalind Lawson attempts prison program reform, cites personal transformation. She's teaching other inmates about recognizing manipulation patterns, Claire explained. The prison psychologist says she's making real progress. Good for her, I said, meaning it, but that chapter of my life is closed. Mom, Cora called out. The Sterling siblings want to discuss expanding the Foundation's reach. The next hour flew by in a whirlwind of conversations, plans, and connections. People shared their stories, their triumphs, their ongoing struggles. Each one reinforced why we'd created the Foundation. As the event wound down, Jonathan joined me at a quiet corner table. Quite a turnout, he said, sliding me a coffee. But you haven't checked your phone in hours. I pulled it out, 7 missed calls from the prison. She's persistent, he observed. She always was. I stared at the notification. Maybe that's what made her so dangerous. And now, I deleted the notifications. Now she's just someone who taught me what not to be. Mom? The twins approached, followed by a group of young adults, all children of fraud victims. We want to start a youth outreach program, help kids spot the warning signs early. Looking at them, my children, who'd grown into such compassionate, strong individuals, I felt a surge of pride. You know what the best revenge is? I asked Jonathan. He gestured at the room full of healing families, at my twins leading their peer support initiative, at the wall displaying our Foundation's mission statement, transform pain into power. I think you figured it out, he smiled. The last guests were leaving when Claire brought me one final message, a letter from the prison. Unlike the others, I opened this one. Sylvia, I watched your Foundation announcement on TV. For the first time, I saw you, really saw you. Not as an extension of my ambitions or a target for my resentment, but as the remarkable woman you've become despite me, not because of me. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I want you to know that you've succeeded in the one area I always failed. You've created something that helps people instead of hurting them. Don't respond. Don't visit. Just know that at least one good thing came from my failures. They helped you become everything I never could be. Ah. I folded the letter and slipped it into my purse. Then I joined my real family, my children, my friends, my Foundation members, as they planned the next chapter of our shared story. Not a story of revenge or resentment, but one of resurrection, of rising from the ashes stronger, wiser, and ready to light the way for others. That's the thing about phoenixes, they don't just rise, they soar.